The time 0200 hours, November 21, 2025. 15 miles off the coast of western Crimea, a ghost formation of 7 Ukrainian AN-196. Lyuti drones raced across the waves, altitude a mere 13 feet. Their speed a constant 102 miles per hour. Each carried a forward-mounted HEI penetrator incendiary warhead. The airframes constructed of radar-absorbent composites presented a radar cross-section of just 0.05, all square meters, smaller than a gull. They were penetrating the most heavily guarded airspace in Crimea, their vector set directly for the Airai Ridge, the nerve center of Russia's primary early warning radars overseeing the entire Black Sea and its approaches. At an altitude of 2,500 feet, a PD-2, reconnaissance drone call sign Ghost 4 went active. Its infrared optics sliced through the darkness, mapping every target below. The landscape resolved into a digital battle space, a complex lattice of radar sensors, ours and modern weapons. This intricate defense network was scattered across the Atreya mountain slopes. On the eastern apron of Kaicha Air Base, one target stood out, a K-27 helicopter on alert. A thermal bloom from its tail and rotor hub confirmed its engines were hot. For the Russian military, this one aircraft was their only viable platform, capable of networking with ground radar to hunt sea-skimming drones or loitering UAVs. If that helicopter lifted off, the entire Ukrainian drone operation was compromised. It had to be eliminated. First, Ghost 4 began painting the targets, processing on board, uplinking via the military Starlink network. Seconds ticked by. The targeting data cascaded down to the inbound AN-196. A strike swarm. In 2 minutes, target assignments were locked. Drone 1, intercept the Balki-27. Drone 2, strike the 96 L6E. Drone 3, neutralize the Nebo SV. Drone 4, destroy the P-18. Drone 5, take out the Lara A-10. Drone 6, target the BK-16 patrol boat. Drone 7, engage the Panzer S-1 or its backup command sector. The commands were transmitted via FHSS, frequency hopping spread spectrum, a constantly shifting re-encrypted channel cycling frequencies every 5 seconds. This defense technology rendered Russian electronic warfare useless. Jamming was impossible. Takeover a fantasy. The moment the orders were received, the swarm broke formation. They fanned out. Independent arrowheads, each streaking toward its designated target in this modern warfare engagement. In 10 minutes, if the situation held, the entire western Crimean early warning and tactical radar grid would vanish. But on a screen miles away, something flickered to life. The radar display of a Russian Baikov-class patrol vessel off Sevastopol. A string of faint contacts appeared. Stable speed, fixed altitude. Their vector was direct straight into the peninsula's most restricted airspace. The signals were weak, flickering with each sweep of the radar. The Navy crew dismissed it as sea clutter. But by the third sweep, the truth was undeniable. This was not noise. This was contact. A command echoed through the CIC. Switch to tracking mode. Prepare missile launch. The order was instant, a crucial military update for all troops in the area. 5 surface-to-air missiles, a response worth tens of millions of rubles, tore into the night sky. No warning, no hesitation. Flying on semi-active radar guidance, the missiles locked onto reflections from the waves. On the ship, the crew believed they had scored a kill. In 12 seconds, a target eliminated report would be sent to Crimea's Coastal Air Defense Command. But when the smoke cleared, they saw the impossible. The drone formation was intact, unshaken, unchanged. Their objective in this war remained brutally clear: to cripple every early warning asset guarding Crimea's western flank. But one final barrier stood in their way: a Panzer S-1 battery dug in on the southern coastline. The Panzer's radar swept the horizon, a desperate search for targets flying just above the waves. This was Russia's premier point defense system, the Final Guardian. Its purpose was to eliminate cruise missiles, tactical aircraft, and medium-sized UAVs inside a 12-mile perimeter. What it now faced existed in no Russian training manual. At precisely 0200 hours, the first 257 E-6E missiles launched from their rails, locked in semi-active radar mode. A third screamed into the night an instant later. Within 20 seconds, 5 surface-to-air missiles valued at over 30 million rubles were arcing toward the incoming Ukrainian drones. The Panzer crew anticipated a clean radar lock. But the proximity fuses detonated on empty air. Every missile missed. Harmless blossoms of fire in the darkness. The expectation of long-range kills had collapsed. The Podlet K1 radar, a system optimized for tracking threats from 186 miles out, was now effectively blind to targets this close. On the Ghost Force infrared feed, the AN-196 drones held their course, unflinching. Missiles had failed. The Panzer reverted to its last line of defense, twin 30mm autocannons. A critical piece of defense technology was about to be tested. Both two A-38M barrels ignited spitting fire, a torrent of over 2,500 rounds per minute. Streams of red tracer ammunition sliced across the sky. A spectacular but ultimately useless light show. Every round plunged into the sea, falling short of the drones by dozens of feet. The Panzer operator confronted a problem beyond his training. The radar was active. The system was engaging. The system was reacting, yet every weapon failed. The reason was tactical. The Ukrainian drones flew at a precise altitude of 164 feet. They were cutting perpendicular to the Panzer's radar beam, a classic maneuver known as the Doppler notch. And before the operator could complete his war analysis, a far more menacing image materialized on the infrared screen. A second formation of drones was inbound. Its vector was aimed directly at the heart of Crimea's defensive grid. Inside the Kacha command center, an officer's voice was sharp with orders. Get the Ka-27 airborne now. Activate FLIR switch to manual UAV hunting vector toward the tree line. Reinforce radar. The helicopter began to roll from its apron, but Lyuty drone number 1 was already in its terminal dive. It slammed directly into the Ka-27. The detonation tore through the fuselage, igniting the main fuel tank. The rotor mast sheared off instantly. A vertical column of fire erupted, sending shrapnel into the adjacent radar cabin. Secondary fires bloomed. The entire air navigation station was consumed in less than 20 seconds. Drone number 2 approached from the southwest. It hugged the low ridgeline. The 96 L6E radar tower filled its infrared scope. This was the target allocation brain for the S-400 Cuban batteries. If it went down, every S-400 launcher in the sector would become a row of static, useless monuments to a failed defense. The drone operator's grip was firm. Lyuty number 2 climbed to 60 feet, just high enough to lock its final attack angle. Its velocity increased, optimizing penetration for its explosive payload. Time to target 7 seconds. At this point, the drone was no longer an aircraft, it was a guided round, driving straight into the core of Russia's air defense network. Impact. The camera feed shuddered as drone number 2 hit the 96 L6E antenna. The explosion tore the top assembly apart. Cooling grids buckled. Radar modules were shredded into fragments. A slug of molten copper from the high-explosive warhead punched deep, straight into the signal processing core. The result, the entire 96 L6E went dark. Control screens flashed black. The nearby S-400 launchers fell silent, shifting to passive standby. No targeting data. The S-400, the flagship of Russian strategic defense systems in Crimea, was blind. It was now nothing more than a line of steel tubes against a rock face. At Gvardiskoye Air Base, the roar of an Air Force Su-30SM split the night as it rocketed off the runway. It carried 2 R-73 missiles, its bars and phased array radar sweeping for a wave of low-flying UAVs that had lit up the tactical screens inside the cockpit. What the pilot did not know was that he was chasing phantoms. These were decoy Lyuty drones broadcasting signals flying predictable routes. Their only mission was to draw the attention of the Russian military to pull its weapons away, while the true strike drones closed in on their targets. Ground control's order was clear. Activate bars, prioritize low-altitude targets, feed radar data, switch to infrared if required. 30 seconds after the bar system went active, the battle was lost on the screen. It was a snowstorm of scattered white specks, non-stationary, non-repeating. The pilot fought his controls, adjusting the scan angle, narrowing the beam, pushing the gain. But the contacts simply dissolved into electronic noise. Lock failed. A signal would flash, then vanish. Not enough for a firing solution. The bar's end began its target verification cycle, a desperate search for a real target in the clutter. The system demanded 5 consecutive stable sweeps to build a track file. The drones never gave it the chance. They constantly shifted their radar profile, slipped off the beam's axis, dropped into the Doppler null region, a textbook display of modern warfare tactics. After only 2, then 3 sweeps, the pilot adjusted sensitivity. It made no difference. Every time the bars attempted a lock, the target winked out of existence. A high-pitched tone screamed in the pilot's headset. "Radar cannot maintain lock," he broadcast. "I'm firing into the void." With no other option, he committed one of his weapons. An R-73 missile dropped from its pylon. In under 4 seconds, its solid fuel motor ignited, screaming toward Mach 2.5, nearly 1,900 miles per hour. It was a supersonic spear, a piece of advanced defense technology engineered to kill agile fighters at close range. But this was not a fighter. The missile's infrared seeker found no heat signature to lock onto. It veered 12 degrees off its flight path, lost its target, and self-detonated in the empty sky. While the Su-30 pilot was still hunting ghosts, drone number 3 had already completed its attack arc, diving directly onto the Nebo SV radar dome. At exactly 2 a.m., it executed a dive from 72 feet. The high-explosive incendiary penetrator struck the dome dead center. Composite panels shredded. The blast pressure peeled the outer shell backward like a grotesque inverted parachute. A jet of molten copper from the penetrator burned forward. It tore deep into the transmitter's core. In exactly 1 second, the radar's powerful radio frequency signature vanished from the spectrum. Kacha Air Base was now blind to high-altitude threats. Stealth aircraft, long-range cruise missiles all could now approach undetected. The Nebo SV, the backbone for tracking platforms like the F-35, was gone. It was now a heap of smoldering debris. From the northwest, drone number 4 hugged the terrain, hiding in the dark only 20 to 26 feet off the ground. Ahead, the P-18 Terek radar glowed in its infrared sight. A 39-foot mesh antenna spun slowly, an isolated spine of defense between two ridgelines. This was the final layer of low-altitude defense, the last guard against these drones. Its meter band frequency was optimized specifically for this kind of warfare, especially in cluttered terrain. If this radar fell, the southern flank and all airspace under 330 feet would go completely dark. At exactly 2 a.m., drone number 4 locked on, a dive angle of 38 degrees, an impact speed of approximately 100 miles per hour. The strike hit the power converter cluster at the base of the antenna. The explosion was surgical, no massive fireball, but it snapped the rotation shaft clean off and ignited the signal transmission module. The P-18 Terek was now a charred, tilted wreck swaying uselessly in the wind. From the southeast, drone number 5 skimmed the tree line. It crossed the auxiliary runway. Through its thermal lens, the Lyra A-10 radar station was a brilliant hot cube. It was the beacon that guided all landing and navigation for Kacha Air Base. At 2 a.m., the drone fixed its attack vector. It drove straight into the rear service hatch, a precise strike against the radar's switching cabinets. Impact altitude 30 feet. The penetrator warhead detonated. Inside the transmitter core, Doppler processors and phase generators melted into slag. The Lyra A-10 went offline. Kacha Air Base was now dark. Its aircraft could no longer return safely. The war analysis would be grim. Its defense systems had been systematically dismantled. In the Cuban S-400, command post alarms blared. Consoles glowed red. No data feed from the 96 L6E. The Nabo network link was severed. They were flying blind. Across Crimea at the Central Air Defense Coordination Center, 6 stations flashed red in unison. The S-400 defense systems reported total sensor failure. Every Panzer Tor S-300 and S-400 battery on the peninsula was deaf and blind. The nerve center of their entire warfare apparatus was gone. Western Crimea's strategic air defense architecture had ceased to exist. On the tactical maps monitored by both Russian troops and NATO, Crimea once projected power with over 12 synchronized radar stations, a shield of 3 distinct surveillance layers: long-range, mid-range, low-altitude. Tonight, nearly 40% of that capability had evaporated into the Black Sea fog. Low-altitude UAV detection was now a ghost. The over-the-sea early warning was gone. The crucial coordination between radar's launchers and command centers was shattered. Crimea, the most fortified asset in the entire Russian military, had become a black hole on the map. Anything could now slip through the net. From Sevastopol to Gvardievskaya, air defense stations transmitted status reports that confirmed the unthinkable. A military nightmare no commander wanted to read. Yet the Russian Ministry of Defense offered only silence. A public admission of this global conflict failure was impossible. Meanwhile, Ukraine's intelligence directorate began its own broadcast. The footage was stark. Drones weaving through panicked Panzer fire, thermal optics capturing the last moments of a Ka-27 helicopter as it erupted into a fireball. This war analysis showed a direct hit on the 96 L6E, the shattered radar dome of a Nebo SV, the wreckage of a P-18, another Nebo SV, a Lyra A-10. One by one, the eyes of the peninsula went dark. The open-source intelligence community pinned the coordinates Kacha Atri Crimea. It left the Russian command with no room for denial. This was more than losing hardware. It was an act of severing the eyes and ears of the Russian Navy. The Ka-27 is not a fighter. It is the operational heart of Russia's anti-submarine warfare patrols and its maritime navigation ecosystem. The loss of a single combat-ready unit at Kacha was a crippling blow to fleet coordination, a strategic asset their navy cannot easily replace. The destruction of these modern weapons didn't just blind Crimea for a night. It tore away the sensor layers protecting the entire western flank. From this moment, every Ukrainian strike would require fewer drones, less effort, and a significantly higher chance of success. The Russian air defense wall was fractured. The fortress of Crimea was compromised. But beyond the physical damage, Ukraine seized something priceless: psychological dominance. When a low-cost drone can penetrate the heart of Russia's most vaunted air defenses and return unscathed, faith in the system, in the command, and the safety of the rear begins to hemorrhage. This military news delivered an unmistakable message. Crimea is no longer a sanctuary. We can reach you whenever we choose, and when we come again, nothing will stop us.